Welcome to Making Memories. I'm Linda Wright at Randolph-Macon College. Today is March the 6th, 2024. And today I'm here with Professors Chaz Gowan and Mike Fenster, Professors of Environmental Science at Randolph-Macon. To get things started, I'm going to ask you both to introduce yourselves, give us a little bit of background, and tell us how and when you came to the college. So I'm going to do it one at a time, but you can go as long as you like. And I'm going to start with you, Chaz.
Hi, folks. I'm Chaz Gowan. I arrived at the college in '96 to teach both in the biology department and the environmental studies program. In fact, I was the first person hired by the college who had time dedicated specifically to environmental studies, half-time environmental studies. I've been like that since I've been here. Moved here from Colorado, where I got my PhD at Colorado State. Before that, I worked professionally for a consulting firm in Seattle, working on hydroelectric impact on salmon. Michigan State, go Spartans, before that for a master's degree, also working on trout. Got my undergrad degree from the State University of New York, College of Environmental Science and Forestry in Syracuse. And I grew up in New Jersey, spent my first 18 years in South Jersey. Go Eagles, go Phillies, go Flyers. So I like to think of it as one lap around the country. Started in Jersey, New York, Michigan, Seattle, Colorado, Virginia since then.
Great, thank you. Mike Fenster.
All right, good morning. I am Mike Fenster. I am a coastal geologist by training. I arrived to the college in 1998 as a visiting professor, hired as part-time by Brian Moores and Chaz Gowan, my colleague here.
I'll interject. This is the one-year anniversary of Brian's death, and Brian hired both of us. So it's kind of a sad day, actually, but maybe very appropriate for this interview.
Yeah, Brian was certainly a founder of environmental studies at the college, environmental science, and we think very fondly of him, obviously. So I started as a visitor in '98, and then while I was here, the environmental studies program people decided to conduct a search for a full-time tenure-track person, and I was a candidate for the position and obviously got the position.
I ran that search, and it continues to be the biggest professional mistake I've ever made.
Yeah, Chaz and I, you probably get some good laughs in today, hopefully. We are work spouses. We love each other to death, and we still work together for quite a long time, 25 years, I believe.
And where did you come from?
Yeah, so I came from University of Virginia, is where I did my postdoctoral research in coastal geology. And before that, I got my PhD in Boston University. And before that, a master's degree and a Bachelor of Science degree at the University of Mississippi. University of Mississippi, the bachelor's degree was in environmental geology. And then while there, every geologist in the United States and gets a geology degree is required to do a field studies course, and I did an 8-week field studies course through Boston University, which is how I discovered them. And they had a week-long component of that 8 weeks doing coastal science work on beaches, and I fell in love with it. Interviewed with who later and ultimately became my PhD advisor, and took the PhD at Boston University. So lived in the South, then up to the North, and then right here in the sweet spot in Virginia.
Great. So you came as a visitor, and so tell us about the biology department when you first arrived. You mentioned Brian Moores, but who were some of the faculty in it and how that evolved? And then we're going to talk about the environmental studies component. Talk about biology for a minute.
Yep, okay. So I actually arrived as a full-time tenure-track professor in '96. And biology was my home department. Interdisciplinary programs like environmental studies, each faculty member has a home department, so bio was mine. and Wallace Martin was chair. What a wonderful human being. I'll tell a little story about him. It was, I got on the campus, arrived on campus. I went to what they told me was my office, and I opened the door, and there was someone under my desk. All I could see was a derriere sticking out from under the desk. And I said, hello? And the person backed out, and it was Wallace. And I said, hi, Wallace. Why are you under my desk? And he said, well, they were supposed to hook your phone up, but they didn't do it, so I'm doing it. And he literally was hooking wires together with twist ties and stuff. And right there, that tells you a lot about Wallace. Tells you a lot about the college. But he was just that kind of person. He really wanted everything to go right for you. He always was ready to pitch in. Still remains a dear friend. So at the time I arrived, see if I can remember everybody, it was Wallace Martin, Barry Knisley, who remains a fantastic friend, Russ Shea, who unfortunately passed away, probably more than 10 years ago now, Pat Demente, Elsa Falls, Art Conway, Bruce King. I think I have hit everybody there. Each characters in their own way. They were all pretty deep in their careers at that point. I think Russ was probably the youngest, and every one of them in their own way were just fantastic mentors for somebody brand new and trying to figure out which end was up.
Great. How about you, Mike?
Yeah, my situation was a little bit different because I was hired as the only geologist on campus. In fact, I was replacing a geologist who was here before me named Skylar Miller, who I know a lot of people know, who had been here for many years. I believe, I'm not exactly sure when he started, but I know it was probably 40s, I'm guessing 40s or something like that. So we had had a geology presence from his beginning. He was actually in the chemistry department because we don't have a geology department. He was a geochemist, so that was a good fit for him. When I came in, having no geology department and not knowing where to put me, they put me in the physics department. So I had a really, really nice gig here. I didn't have to attend any departmental meetings.
You're your own department. Yeah.
Yeah, I was in the physics department, but I wasn't involved in their curriculum and their teaching courses and all that. So I was just kind of had my own thing. I was hired half-time for environmental studies and half-time to teach geology courses. Later on, when Chaz and I changed the curriculum, and we're really anxious to talk about that, we included a area of expertise component to the major, and that's where I began teaching upper-level courses in geology for students who came to the college and wanted to get an area of expertise in geology discipline.
Great. Well, let's go ahead and talk about that. So you were based in biology, you were based in physics, sort of tenuously. Talk about the development of the environmental studies program and ultimately major.
It's one of our favorite stories.
Yeah, I'll start out. So the program was initiated in '91, so 5 years before I got here. The driving forces at the time were Brian Moores, who we've already discussed, and Bill Franz, member of the physics department, and Steve Lang.
Bruce Unger?
And Bruce Unger, thanks, Mike.
And Brian.
So we had Brian Moores in chemistry, Bill Franz in physics, Steve Lang in economics, and Bruce Unger in political science. And the college was interested in starting interdisciplinary programs at the time, and this was one that was identified as a good choice. Like so many environmental studies programs and interdisciplinary programs in general, the theory was what we can do is cobble together courses from different disciplines and those disciplines were represented by the people I just mentioned.
And Barry Knisley.
And Barry Knisley.
Yeah,
God,
he was the
yeah.
driving force,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
and Barry in biology. Take a moment. Have I forgotten anybody else?
Well, it was an interesting arrangement because it really was a new way of teaching in the early 90s and involving many different departments in one major. And so I think that's everybody. If I think of somebody else.
But it was distinct courses people took. There was not collaboration within the courses. Was there?
That's right. It was, so the original curriculum basically was a couple of bio courses and a political science course, an ethics course,
Economy.
economics course. Bill Franz taught a course called Atmospheres and Weathers. So most of them were existing courses. Steve Lang created an environmental economics course, but largely it was Econ 201, microeconomics, using environmental issues as examples, but it was essentially the same course, which is an important point. The original curriculum was largely existing courses taken from the existing catalog, and with an intro course at the beginning and a senior seminar, 1 credit at the end. Those were the only courses developed specifically for the program. And that obviously is a very economical way to say, we have a new major, come here for environmental studies, because really you're not spending much in the way of new dollars. You're just cobbling together what was existing. And so it's a very smart way to get something going, but it's got to mature to truly serve the student needs. I refer to curricula like the original ones we had as deep as a plate of beer. So they come out with a little bit of bio and a little bit of economics and a little bit of political science. And they've talked about environmental issues, but there's not a depth there that is necessary to be a professional.
Yeah, we used to refer to it as a smorgasbord curriculum because students had to take, pick 2 courses in this category and 1 in this category and 3 in this category and whatever. And so it felt a little cobbled together, and there certainly wasn't a direct focus on how to solve environmental problems.
So who taught the intro course?
I taught.
Good question.
Yeah, I took that over. It's called EVST 103 at the time. Brian had been teaching it. I took that over from him. Brian was program director of the program, and he was teaching that course. And then I took it over up until the time we revamped the curriculum, and that course was eliminated.
So I think that model has been used for other interdisciplinary things I'm thinking of at the college. That's a way of having different courses with an emphasis in that area and put them together and create a program or major.
It's like a lot of things around here. It's driven by sweat equity of the people who have a passion for implementing it, but it's got to be done on a shoestring, and that's a great way to do it. I visited lots of other colleges who have been contemplating starting environmental studies programs, and I always recommend here's a way you can get started, because everybody faces budget limitations. So really the costs come down to being able to free up some of your faculty to teach maybe just the intro course and the senior seminar at the end, and otherwise everybody's teaching the same courses they always have taught, but now they have environmental studies majors in them.
Yeah, and it's interesting too to me that the environmental movement in academia, we were kind of late in that, and it started. And my impression is it started in the 1970s. I did my work at UVA, my postdoc work, and I taught in the environmental science program over there. They started in the 70s, so we were kind of late coming into the environmental world in academia, and it typically tends to my experience here is it tends to fall on the heels of people who really care about a particular topic and want to get it going. And thank goodness we had Brian and Barry and Bruce and Bill and all the people here to get together and say, hey, we need to start teaching our students about this pretty important subject.
And the students, I'm sure, were interested. I'm sure I would think. You had some.
Yeah, I wanted to say too, we did get a lot of student interest, but our concern was later, as we had used the curriculum for many years, that the major was being perceived as biology light. There were a lot of biologists who contributed to the program, contributed courses to the major, and kind of started to feel like, and this is kind of anecdotal, Chaz, you may be able to have more data on this, but my impression was that students who couldn't hack it in the harder biology major said, hey, let's go major in environmental studies.
Yeah, and that's true. A concern Mike and I had from the beginning was we got a fair number of students who really weren't all that interested in the environment or interested in doing it as a career. It was just perceived as a relatively easy major. And part of that was true because it was largely composed of introductory courses. They could take a lot of 100 and 200 level courses and turn it into a major. Part of it was a misperception. Students would, I joke, but they kind of came in with the attitude of, if I just say I love whales and I recycle, then I get an A. And I want to get a high GPA in college, so this is a way to do it. That perception was wrong. The classes were not all that easy. But that drove us, that was part of what drove us to say we've got to mature as a program and do something differently than what we're currently doing.
So talk about that.
Well, then the other part of that was a driver for needing change was that there was just becoming the two of us. The people who originally started the program started retiring, and we weren't sure that the program was sustainable at the time. So we had multiple factors that were driving us to think differently. So I don't actually know how we started, but I do remember, I have memories of it being at your house, at your old house. And I remember being in the kitchen and just racking our brains about how we could create a program that was novel and rigorous and engaging.
And preparatory.
And so conversations, I want to say, began 2002 or 3-ish?
Yeah. So we had each been here for 5-6 years or so, and came to understand what the program currently was. I want to say just enormous respect once again for the people who had the vision to start it and how they got it going. But it was time for a change, and just maybe summarizing the motivating factors. The deep as a plate of beer curriculum, which really translates into not really preparatory for a career. The perception that it was an easy major. We knew that it was a difficult career to have, and we needed rigorous preparation, so we wanted the students to understand that. Also a part of it, Mike, was both Mike and I had come from a straight up consulting background. You get clients, you do work for them, you charge them for it. That's the business model. And Mike had similar experiences, and that set us in contrast to a lot of other places. I'll mention that we did a lot of traveling to conferences, hearing about other colleges' environmental programs and how they were structured. And by and large, they were really devoted to what Mike and I call environmental literacy. So what students need to know about are the current issues of the day And they need to be involved in greening the campus, so recycling and solid waste management and
Energy.
energy. So they would be doing a lot of energy audits on buildings, and that was the focus of most other places. And I'll speak for myself, Mike, then you can chime in, but that stuff is all great, but the problem with environmental literacy is the issues keep changing. You can learn all about, at the time, acid rain, oh my God. Well, that problem's been addressed, to greater, or ozone, the ozone hole. I mean, new issues come up, and you have to be able to get up to speed on new issues.
Yeah, that was the epiphany I had. Were you with me at the meeting at
No,
at
go ahead.
Brown?
That's a good story.
I was at Brown University, and I went to a meeting called the Structure and Programmatic Issues Concerning Environmental Studies Programs. And I remember being in a large conference room, tiered tables and so forth, maybe 100 people from all over the country. And these people were faculty and administrators, there were provosts, there were some college presidents in the room because they were really interested in how do we get environmental studies programs going at our college. The leader was a guy named Eric Pallant from, I think it was from Allegheny, Allegheny University. And Eric said, okay, I want everybody in this room just to shout out to me, what are the most important environmental issues of today's climate?
Or knowledge that students must have.
Knowledge that students must have about today's environment. And people shout out different topics, and he filled 3 whiteboards full of words. And then he said, let's just take this one subject that you threw out, climate. He said, what are all the different elements that students need to know to truly understand environmental change and
What do we
climate?
need to teach them in 4 years?
Yes. And he filled up another 3 boards. And that was really my aha moment. And his conclusion, of course, was there's no way we can do that. So how do we teach students to become environmental professionals? And Chaz, that conference for me, and Chaz and I went to a few others, where similar issues were being discussed, except the issues that were being discussed at these other meetings tended to focus on greening the campus and sustainability on campus. And given our backgrounds, and given what we thought students needed to know to become environmental professionals, that wasn't sitting well with us.
It's a great idea. I mean, the campuses need to be greener, but we just didn't feel like you organized an academic program around that.
Around recycling.
Right. Well, of course, that could be seen as maybe the campus was the laboratory. It was
Yeah,
just
yeah.
an easy place.
No,
to
there's a
do that.
lot of good
Yeah.
features about it.
Yeah.
I'm not denigrating that approach at all, and really great colleges have
Yeah.
done really great things with it. So
National organizations have developed around that focus. So we're
there's not casting shade on any of that. It just, given my background in consulting, Mike's background, similar kinds of things, it just wasn't, it didn't feel right to us.
Right. So you felt a need to develop the curriculum deeper, as you keep saying, a more tour. I like that word you said. So what did you come in a way where you could just see there's no way you can cover the breadth of it. You're going to go for the depth. So what did you do?
This is one of our favorite stories. You want to go?
No, start. I've been talking a lot.
I don't know how, so beginning from initial conversations in Chaz's kitchen, usually because he's an amazing chef and cooks really good food. So we would.
Mike's a good eater.
And Mike's a good eater. We would have these, obviously our professional conversations there. But starting from that point forward, we would, every time, it seemed like every time we got together, we were saying, how can we pull off something different at the college that accomplishes all those objectives that we just talked about? And so we went off to one conference and continued to talk about developing a curriculum to meet all these different objectives. and I believe it was on a connecting flight in Philadelphia.
Go Philadelphia. All the good things come from Philly.
I might disagree about that one, but yeah, so there we were at a pub having a beer
At the airport.
and it was like unleashing unlocked creativity. Everything just flew from our brains and from our hands, and we were without any paper at the time, so I think we ended up grabbing some bar napkins.
It was literally on a napkin.
Yeah.
And there's
Not
where
apocryphal.
there's where we wrote our new environmental studies curriculum.
That's awesome.
I wish I had that napkin.
Yeah.
Well, it really goes to show the value of going, I will just say for the record, going for faculty travel and going to conferences, even when you're not presenting, just learning, and you came back and you're all of that, and you
Just a lot of positive energy.
yeah,
Yep.
brainstorming and so okay.
And also, it's just interesting to me how 2 years worth of intensive conversations and meeting roadblock after roadblock after roadblock.
Not roadblocks presented by the college, but problems that Mike and I saw with the ideas. No, that one here. What about this idea? Yeah, that's got a piece of it, but that really isn't going to work for this reason or that reason. And
Well, we did have some systemic hurdles we had to cross over. For example, teaching resources. You know, our teaching commitments at the college, we had to work that into our existing teaching loads, and that was not a trivial problem to undertake.
And although a lot of people around campus were interested in environmental issues, maybe had a inclination to participate, to contribute courses, the fact of the matter is their teaching loads were already packed with meeting their home department needs. So we really could not get any number of faculty to say, yes, I will devote a part of my teaching load and develop courses specific for an environmental studies major. That was a big hurdle.
Yeah. Also, building the vertical integration necessary to create more rigorous courses as you become,
weren't all introductory,
as you move from freshman to sophomore
Yeah.
to junior, senior.
So how did you solve that? What did you do?
Well, go ahead.
Okay, so the napkin basically had two components to it. And the first was we continue to call the core, and the second was the area of expertise. And the philosophy was the core was mostly devoted to skill building, things you needed to know how to do to be an environmental professional. We'll come back to that.
And we used to call it foundational.
I think maybe we did. I like core better. So anyway, it's been core for a while. And then the other, and I know this hasn't changed, the area of expertise. So there is no such thing as one person being an expert on all the disciplines that come to bear on even one relatively simple environmental problem. It is truly interdisciplinary. You need to know biology and chemistry, political science, economics, ethics, sociology. There's just so many components.
Environmental fill in the blank.
Environmental fill in the blank. History. And yet what we wanted students prepared for was a career, which meant they had to be an expert in something. They couldn't just be a generalist. And so the area of expertise was basically required students to go to another major, another program, and take what amounts to somewhere between a minor and a major number of credits, and not including the intro courses to that major or minor, but so a lot of 15 credit hours in that discipline, in that specific discipline, and then we will count them as environmental studies courses. And the objective is that is where they reflect their career goal. Do I want to be an environmental biologist, an environmental mathematician, statistician, an environmental economist, an environmental lawyer, an environmental policy analyst, an environmental sociologist. I mean, the list goes on. So that's where they're supposed to take courses that truly reflect their career goals, so they are an expert, at least as much as an undergrad is an expert in something. So they pick their area of expertise to reflect their career goal.
Yeah, you had to be, we realized students had to be good at something.
Specific. And that also, that took our plate of beer curriculum and still provided students with a lot of electives, but now they had to be within one specific discipline. So there was going to be depth in that one area, and it also helped solve the problem of we didn't have other faculty who could contribute. So if they're in the regular bio courses becoming experts in biology, they're just another student in those regular biology courses. So we didn't have to get faculty to commit teaching time specifically to the environment, and yet students were gaining an expertise that would serve them in their career.
Yeah. So
Why don't you do the core?
The original intent was to take that knowledge and that you're gaining in your area of expertise and bring that into the core, and is pretty, we think, is a pretty novel way.
This is the part that's really different.
Yeah. Well, the beauty of sitting down with a blank piece of paper when you're developing a curriculum is you can just ask the question, what do students need to become environmental professionals? And what we came up with was things that are in common to general education at a university or college. They need to learn how to write. They need to learn how to speak. They need to learn about the ethics of environmental problems. They need to learn about the policies and laws associated with environmental issues. I know Chaz is fond of saying, I've heard him say at least before, there wouldn't be any environmental problems if we didn't have policies and laws and regulations. So that was an important component of the core. And then we also realized at the time this emerging technology called Geographic Information Systems, GIS, was getting hot, and that was a major skill that was needed by environmental professionals. And not many colleges and universities were actually teaching GIS courses at the time.
Not at the undergraduate level.
Yeah, and GIS was kind of a certification or a collection of courses, sometimes a master's degree. So I think we were kind of on the leading edge of getting GIS into the undergraduate curriculum. And then the hallmark of our program were what we call these environmental problems.
So far you've buried the lead.
Well, I'm saving the best for last.
There you go. Go.
Okay. The hallmark it was.
Yeah, so you get all your tools, you put your tools in the toolbox, but the hallmark was really how do you take these tools that we're getting in the curriculum and this expertise from this other component, and how do we solve environmental problems, real environmental problems. And so we came up with environmental problem solving 1, environmental problem solving 2, and environmental problem solving 3.
Very creative. I want to interject
Yeah,
here
please.
and this is the genesis of the napkin. Really, this is where the napkin, the curriculum started. We said, all right, as Mike said, what do students need? And the first thing we identified was they need to be able to work in interdisciplinary teams on problems that at first they don't know much about. They need to be able to start from scratch on an issue, work in teams, and develop analyses that drive good decisions. And so we said, well, what do they need to do that? The first thing we got to was, well, they have to be an expert in something. They can't know everything. So these interdisciplinary teams have to be composed of people with different disciplines. So that's what led to the area of expertise. And then we came back to, okay, how do we actually get students to develop their skills in environmental problem solving? And that was environmental problem solving 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah,
So-
the way we we utilized those courses was constructing this vertical integration system where we had students take the first problem-solving course as a freshman, so that was the gateway course into the major, and then the other two occurred in their junior and senior years. And the juniors and seniors took the course together at the same time. Our original intent, which didn't end up working so well, but our original intent was that the seniors who've gone through the process twice could mentor the juniors who've only gone through it once. What we found instead was many times there were a lot of good juniors who were sometimes better than the seniors at the skill sets. And so anyway, we kept it like that. And
It's still good to have them all together.
it's still good to have them all together. We've been doing this since 2005, by the way.
Oh wait, get to the meat.
Yeah, okay, so
What are these courses?
yeah, so these courses are, they involve a client. Chaz and I spend a lot of time identifying a good client for these courses.
Off-campus client.
Off-campus client. The client comes in and pitches a problem to the students.
A real problem they're having at that moment.
And the students take about a month to get up to speed on the nature of the problem. The client returns back to class after presenting the problem to the students. After a month, the client comes back and the students present a scope of work or a proposal to the client that basically says, this is what we aim to do to address the issues that you brought to us the first week of class.
To get you answers.
To get you answers. And the students spend all the rest of the semester working on the problem, doing the data collection, doing the analysis, whatever the client needs. We often maintain communication between the students and the client during the semester if there's questions or concerns that come up. And at the end of the semester, the client comes back and the students make a presentation orally to the client, and they then submit a written report to the client.
So it very much is a consulting model. We're working for the client. As Mike said, the client comes in the beginning of the semester. They present a formal RFP, a request for proposal. So that simply describes, from the client's perspective, here's who I am, here are the issues I'm facing, the questions I have, the information I need. And so that request for proposal is where the class starts. I'll say a few things about that. Mike talked about, yes, we have to develop these clients every semester. And by the way, we've been teaching these courses every semester for now 19 years. I remember that our biggest concern was, where are we going to
Find
keep clients every semester? Well, it turns out if you offer somebody 25 talented college students to work for free,
It wasn't that hard.
you can find them. But what we purposely do, well, first of all, we've gotten pretty good at figuring out projects that will work well. Not too big, not too small, enough to keep 25 college students active all semester working on something hard. But the key feature is all we do is work hard enough with the client to see the outlines of the problem, to know that it's going to work for us that semester, but we don't do any legwork on it beforehand beyond that. We don't do any analysis. We don't put together a proposal like, here's how we will do this. We don't have a plan for the class.
We literally learn alongside of our students.
And that has been the absolute key, because what kills the student learning and the motivation is when the students correctly perceive that you already have the answers and it's their job to guess them. And instead, it's nobody in this room has the answers. We don't even know how we're going to get answers. Let's start brainstorming.
And that's where Chaz and I work as project managers in the class, not so much teachers as managing the information flow and analysis.
Yeah, it's fun. When the EVST 105, so the problem solving one, composed almost all freshmen, sophomores, they have never had a course before where the teacher doesn't already know the answers.
Yeah.
And it's not until the end of the semester that it dawns on them that he really didn't know what we were going to do all semester.
Yeah.
And it frustrates them during the semester. You know, obviously it's like
They want the right answer.
they
Is
want
this
the right
the-
answer. And when you have brainstorming discussions, their mode through their whole school was, if there's a classroom discussion, I don't really need to listen to the discussion. I just have to write down what the conclusions are, because that's what is important. That's what's going to be on the test or whatever. And in the real world, those brainstorming discussions are the work, is the work. That's how you're making progress on things. And so it's very frustrating for them early on we do have exams. We couch exams as we're about to have a client meeting. So the client's not going to really be there for the exam, but it's a client meeting, and the client wants an update status report on where we are. And the client could ask us anything about any aspect of the project, and we have to have that information at our fingertips. That's how we write the exams. That's how we pitch them to students. And we'll get a third of the way through the semester, and students will have no notes or sketchy notes, because there's been a lot of classroom discussion, and there's been a lot of field work, and we're collecting data and stuff. And then they're like, what's on the exam? Everything we have discussed so far all
I
semester.
wish I had a nickel for every time we said that.
All the data that we have collected. I mean, we didn't know what we were going to do before we started, but now we know what we did and what we have found out, what our preliminary ideas are, what false starts we made. We thought something was going to work, but it didn't, so we had to pivot. Why did we pivot? What was the roadblock we hit? Why did we develop the alternative strategy for how to get the same kind of information? All of that is the course. That's what you have to be good at to be a professional.
I'm chuckling to myself because it took us years to realize that students don't know how to brainstorm.
Well, it's because they're looking for the right answer, like
They're
you said.
looking for the right
They want to
answer.
know.
Oh
is that
my
right?
gosh, and the first time we came up with a way to get them to brainstorm, we had them take those large Post-it pads you can get and stick them up on the wall, and we just said, okay, just generate some ideas about this particular, whatever the questions were at the time. And they would stand there staring at the paper, like not knowing what to do.
Or afraid of seeming silly.
There's
Like
that
your
too.
first, your
Yeah.
first idea might,
Yeah. So,
or being wrong,
you know,
because they think
you-
there's a right answer.
Yeah, and you can say there are no stupid ideas all you want, and socially it's very
Yeah,
difficult,
yeah.
especially as freshmen, very difficult for them to put themselves out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that is the skill we're trying to teach. That ability to really not know much about a topic, do the background, literature search, Wikipedia, whatever it is, wherever you can get information. And we do stress peer-reviewed sources and gray literature, I mean, legitimate
And teach them the
sources.
difference between those
Teach the
two.
difference and how to find them and how to read them. I mean, there's a lot of skill building on information literacy. But at the end of the day, the real skill beyond that is to be able to use that in a free-form discussion in a group to come up with solutions, to come up with approaches to solving the problem. And as we've already said, the reason the brainstorming dies, or the reason these class discussions that students don't understand, that's the class, is really all they want to do is listen for what we say, because we're going to tell them what we really should do or what's really important, and we don't do it in it. Because we don't know. We'll pick out, it's like, oh, Bob, that's an interesting idea. Explain your thinking a little. And we'll try to, when we hear a good idea, we'll try to lead it, and we will come down to making final decisions. All right, we've all heard all of these ideas. I think this is a plan that should work, and here's why. But it is that conversation that leads up to those statements that really matters.
I think one of my greatest joys and teaching rewards that I get out of these problem-solving classes is hearing the students talk at the end of the semester.
Mhm.
They sound, and this has been true since we first started teaching this, they sound like environmental professionals.
Mhm.
And they're using the language, the jargon,
Mhm.
in a way that demonstrates competence in this particular
Mhm.
topic.
Mhm.
And when they speak before the client at the end of the semester, they are very confident.
Mhm.
It's a beautiful thing.
That is a conversation among peers. That the client and the students, it sounds very much like the consulting meetings that I sat through.
Wicked. Well, that is a beautiful description. You're just describing those problem-solving courses of what one of my questions or prompts for you was about something one of your colleagues said, that authentic hands-on experiences define their teaching. So I think you just really described that's the core of what you do.
Yeah.
The secret is to know as little as the students do.
And people think that we don't
these-
really work to teach these classes, but I'm telling you, it is more work for us to come into a course that way than to have spent weeks or months prepping for a
Oh,
class.
sure, because you don't know where it's going, and you got to be able to assess it.
And it's a challenge. It keeps us interested. It keeps
Yeah.
us motivated and all that. Yeah.
Also, just point out, I've said we've done them for 19 years. We have not repeated any. Like, these are truly new every semester. We have reused a client a couple of times, but always on a completely
Different.
new project. So no textbook, no lectures, there's nothing canned.
Yeah.
Yeah, the freshmen take the course in the fall, and the juniors and seniors take it in the spring. And Chaz and I have alternated fall intro problem-solving course every year for the freshmen. But then we team teach the juniors and seniors together.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been one of the greatest joys of my career here is getting to work with my colleague here.
I can
and-
imagine.
Yeah, and doing all the work while he stays in the classroom and takes naps. And
Well, one thing one of your colleagues asked me to ask you about is what is known among students, I guess, or faculty as the Gowan method.
Oh, I have no idea.
seriously,
Okay.
Could you have a hint on what that is?
It is a tough love approach to experiments, open-ended experiments. This was a faculty colleague who said that this person likes to use an open-ended experiment. You know, here's an experiment, we don't know where it's going. And students are initially quite frustrated. And another student said, oh, well, that's the Gowan method.
Okay.
I think the question really is, how many students have you made cry?
Yeah, I know. I do have a box of tissues in my office.
Oh, maybe you've already just.
No, I mean, we have discussed that in a lot of ways. But I try to combine a lot of empathy with that. And I don't know if it's my personality or not, but I think sometimes the hard ass comes across more than the empathetic person. Once students have worked with me a while, I hope that they see the empathy. They know that what I'm really trying to do is prepare them for the real world.
Yeah.
And in the real world, all the questions are open-ended.
Yeah.
And the expectations for performance are high.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm trying to get across to them in 4 years.
Yeah. No, that was, I think that was said with great admiration. I had the impression that was the Gowan method.
Well, it's true, so
Yeah,
I can't
yeah.
argue with it.
Okay. Well, you really had a beautiful description of teaching, and you used the word joy many times in that last segment. So thank you. I want to mention a couple of teaching awards, and just for the record, for both of you. And if I've missed anything, please do not hesitate to brag. So Chaz, you have received the Samuel Nelson Gray Distinguished Professor Award in 2012, the Thomas Branch Award in 2004, and you were the Paul H. Warnham Professor in Biology from 2008 to 2019.
All correct.
And Mike, you were the Stephen H. Watts Professor in Physical Sciences from 2012 to 2022 and received the United Methodist Church Award for Exemplary Teaching in 2008. And if I missed anything.
I'll throw in awards for the program that Mike and I won together. And one was, I think this was 2009 maybe, from the Soil and Water Conservation Districts in Virginia. And the second one was maybe 2018 or 19 from a York River Roundtable. So these are basically professional organizations. And what distinguishes those in my mind is those were awards not for teaching. They're awards for on-the-ground environmental work we have done. And all of that was done in the context of these problem-solving courses. So these answers that we've been given to the client get implemented and
make a difference.
Make a difference.
Wow.
We, probably in the neighborhood of $800,000 worth of on-the-ground stuff that has been done.
Yeah, I don't even know how you could put a monetary value on some. I mean, some of the projects we've been involved with have worked with underrepresented communities on contaminated groundwater from their wells. I mean, there's no monetary value on things like that, and we feel good about the difference we've made in the community and in the state through these problem-solving courses and the work our students have done.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations. Well, you've both been very active in the college in other ways than teaching. So we'll just spend a few minutes if you want to talk about that. Chaz, you were faculty representative to the Board of Trustees in the Cabinet, as well as serving on the Committee on Admissions, Credits, and Academic Status of Students.
Every committee the college has,
No, not
Chaz
every.
has been on.
Oh, okay. Well,
every
and
committee.
curriculum. All right, I may have missed a few, but I do. But just in, you can talk about any of it you like. But I would like to hear your thoughts on the first year experience program, where you were co-chair in the early years of that program. If you want to talk about some of the goals of that program and how that was.
Sure, I can do that. That program, so the college wanted to revamp its curriculum. It had been decades, and so I was on a committee to do that, and it became called the cornerstone of the curriculum became known as the first year experience. Then John Raboon was the driver of that early on, chair of the committee that did the curricular review, and then the first director of the first year experience. I took over after John as director. It lasted 8, 9, maybe 10 years, and I loved it. It was based on a lot of the principles that we have already discussed with the problem-solving courses. Team taught by 2 faculty, lasted a full year, involved about 30 students total, and each pair of faculty would develop a course around some topic, and you would spend the year analyzing that topic. So lots of the same. They weren't necessarily off-campus clients, although Mike, when we taught them, we used the exact same model. As we didn't teach any of them together, right?
No.
We would teach them separately, but we would accept that when one of us taught one of those FYC courses, we would accept that in substitute for EVST 105. In any event, it was really pedagogically cool. It was really hard to teach, and it was really hard to sustain economically. And it kind of collapsed under its own weight. So I'm disappointed about that. I was really hopeful that it would become a fixture at the college, and it just wasn't sustainable.
Yeah, my first year, I came in 2005, was the first year it was fully implemented. I think it had been a pilot before that. And I thought it was so interesting hearing about that when I was interviewing the interdisciplinary aspect. And Right, but it was because all freshmen were taking it, and it was small class sizes, and for all the reasons you said, I was sorry to see that it wasn't able to.
Tons of benefits, and just working with
Yeah.
colleagues on campus that we had not had the opportunity to do so, and actually getting some remuneration for working with our colleagues. We get some startup money
Yeah.
to develop the courses.
And the creative matchup between the
incredible.
disciplines was really fascinating. How just faculty teaching who wouldn't have naturally seemed like a co-teacher within that other department.
Yeah, it really sparked a lot of professional relationships that we don't have another way to do that.
Yeah. Well, Mike, you were a co-chair with President Lindgren on the Randolph-Macon strategic plan, which was approved in 2009, the last big one. We're about to launch another one. Well, we have launched another strategic plan. But I wanted to know if you wanted to reflect at all on that fun process.
Sure. Bob called me up one day and said, I'd like you to consider being co-chair of strategic planning with me. And boy, in the back of my head, I was thinking, I just love doing my research here at the college, and I know my research would take a hit. So I said, no, Bob, sorry. I can't do it. I just love what I do, and I'm on a roll in my research career. And then so I said no initially, and then I thought about it overnight. I said, just why don't you give me overnight and think about it just in case. And I thought, boy, this is an opportunity of a lifetime. This is an opportunity to learn from someone who you really admire and respect, and learn how things are done here at the college. And I thought that benefit was far too great, and called up the next day and said, sure, I'd love to do it. And and I was right about that. I enjoyed immensely working closely with Bob on big questions surrounding the college. And one of the big questions at the time was, how do we survive in this age of changing demography, in the age of shrinking budgets, in the age of shrinking prospective clientele? And we traveled a lot together to learn. We read a lot together, and we worked well together, I think, and I look back on those times fondly.
Very good. So, any thoughts? Well, you also served on the strategic resource allocation team, which was 2 years ago.
As did Chaz.
Oh, okay, both of you.
But he
were.
was on the...
He was on the staff side,
And
I
you were
was
on the faculty side. Okay,
Yeah.
you both were on that, which I guess was laying some groundwork for the current strategic planning initiative. So,
Yeah, my
Any thoughts on
overarching
that?
thought on that was the same that's been here since I started college, which is we are amazing what we do on a shoestring budget. Like, how do we do what we do with what we have? And it's been like that since I started working here, and things haven't changed. And I'm guessing that's the main objective of this SRA process, is to align our budget with our mission.
that is doing really important, good work on a shoestring has been one of the through lines in these interviews.
When I
Done.
first started here, and I'll tell you an interesting story too. It won't take long. When I first started working here, and I taught at many places before I came here, and I worked at many places, academic institutions. And when I came here and saw what my colleagues do and how they work here, I was blown away. Like, I can't believe we have this quality of faculty at this small institution in Central Virginia. I mean, these are quality people here. And so when we were trying to get the money raised to build this new science building that we have here, Brock Hall, we call it Brock Jr., one of the things I did to convince the board of associates at the time was I took the resumes of all of the curriculum vitae of all the faculty here that worked in and Copley Science Center. And I just cut out the research part of what these people do, and I taped the paper end to end and rolled it up into a scroll, put it in a shoebox, and I took the associates in the foyer of Copley Hall, and I said, "You want to know what our faculty in Copley Hall do? Let me show you." And I unrolled the scroll, and the scroll went from the back door of Copley all the way almost to the library of just the accomplishments of my colleagues in Copley.
Yeah.
And that summarized well, I think, what the caliber of my colleagues.
And I'll add to that, because that level of research productivity, it's not necessary to get tenure. It's not compensated. Our main task is teaching. So that long list of research accomplishments came from self-motivated people who were passionate about what they did. And that is why we have been able to survive to do amazing things on a shoestring budget. And it goes, so that's the research example, but same thing with teaching and even service to the college. We would not have survived if it wasn't for the passion of the people who are here. They believe in,
Amen, brother.
They believe, we all believe in what we're doing. And it's not because of the pay, it's not because of the facilities, it's not because of the perks. Somehow we have managed to hire people who just give a darn, intrinsically. And it's a shame we can't pay them more.
The end.
Yeah. Well, this has been great to have this conversation and hear all about the development of the Environmental Studies program and just the way you all work together has just, your friendship and collegiality has really shone through, and I'm really grateful for that. I do want to give you a chance to step back a little bit broader and just have any reflections on your time here. I think you summed up the description of your colleagues really well. But if there are any, well, I do have this one question. If you were writing the history of Randolph-Macon College from your time, what would you include?
Scanlon's 2 books.
Okay, yep. We got those.
Thank you, James.
Yeah, we got those. That's a great resource. But his book ends, I think, 2007, so we're going to say the history to continue on from James's great work.
I think one of the biggest changes I've seen has been beyond the bricks and mortars on campus, just the nature of the students. We used to joke behind closed doors that strategic planning was, that last strategic plan was about getting better students, getting more better students who will pay more for their education because we really wanted to reduce the discount rate. That worked. It worked. And it worked not just in the numbers, but it worked in the caliber of the students. I just gave a talk. I was asked to give a talk at the trustees faculty dinner just recently, and one of the things I said there was that when I first started here, I would overhear conversations among students who would say, "Oh, talk about the parties they had last night," and brag about classes they missed, and things that weren't super academic. Now, when you walk around campus, you hear students talk about interesting ideas they learned in classes. They talk about homework assignments. They talk about projects that they're working on. It's really been phenomenal to watch how the nature of the students has changed. I'm not really sure how to describe that, but would I include that in the history of Randolph-Macon? It's kind of soft because, history is more about, I think, people or can be more about people, bricks and mortars, and those kind of things. But I do think that's been fantastic.
Yeah,
That's great.
I agree completely. It was hard to teach here because you knew most of the students in the class were just jumping through hoops. They had their own reasons for being in college. I will say universally, from day one, I have really enjoyed them. They have always been really nice human beings. You just wish that they cared more about what you were trying to show them. But that has really changed over the almost 30 years that I've been here. And now, today, the classrooms are populated by and large with people who really want to get something out of their education. And it's a lot more gratifying. It's a lot less, I'll put it, it's a lot less frustrating. Simply because you watch somebody not care about what you know will be important to them for a career the rest of their lives. And now, and our problem solving within the environmental studies program, these problem solving courses have made a real difference in students understanding this is true preparation for the rest of my life, and I need to take it seriously because it's going to pay off. It is so much more gratifying to teach students with that attitude rather than I just got to put 4 years in and get a degree, and I don't see a connection between these 4 years and the rest of my life beyond I will have a college degree.
Yeah. I think, too, environmentally, we've changed in a positive direction on campus. And I think our classes have contributed to that, but we've also had student groups who've done interesting things. A couple examples I can point out are some of the hardscape that we see around campus and landscape. The stormwater management, Chaz was initially involved in that, and you'll see some signage on campus with some beautiful landscaping and protecting the Chesapeake Bay. And I think also we brought awareness to the community about E. coli bacteria that gets in our water pollution, and that dogs are the primary source. We've learned that and educated the campus, and as a result, we now have doggy bags spaced around campus, and so I think we've done well environmentally, and we've been also involved with some of the new buildings and so forth.
With your LEED, what do you call it, LEED status?
LEED certification.
Yeah. Some final comment from me, unless you have another question, is I am optimistic about the future of the college. It is a really rough time for higher ed. It's a really rough time, particularly for liberal arts colleges. But the only reason I'm optimistic, there are a lot of headwinds blowing against us, and the only reason I'm optimistic is I know that we provide value to the students, and I just have to have faith that the rest of the country will increasingly come to recognize how much value we do provide. It's hard to get that message out, especially when you've got Virginia Tech and UVA and William and Mary, unbelievably fantastic schools. We provide a product, an education, that is truly fantastic. And if people just knew that, we'd have more better students willing to pay more. So I have faith the word will get out.
Well, thank you. Are there any memories or stories that you wanted to come tell me today that we didn't get a chance to say?
Can we do this again and have another hour?
Sure. We'll plan another day. But we'll leave it there for today. Or go ahead, Charles.
Okay, I have one story that encapsulates maybe several of the things we talked about, and it's a stupid little story, but it does tie together a lot of stuff. So in the problem-solving courses, we have this thing right at the beginning we call the jargon assignment. So whenever you got a new project, there's a whole bunch of terminology, acronyms. The client is speaking a language that we don't speak, and so Mike and I collect 25, 30 of these terms while talking to the client. And the first assignment is to the students is, here's a bunch of terms, go figure out what they mean You know, it's a writing assignment. They got to write. They got to do some research, use the literature. It builds a lot of different skills, but it's basically get up to speed in 7 days on all of this stuff so that when the client shows up, we're speaking the same language as the client. I always consider it as just a necessary evil, a hoop that you had to jump through early on in a process. Figured the students hated it. We didn't like grading it. It just was a necessary evil. And we were talking to some alums, and he said, so out of the whole environmental studies major, what do you think was the most valuable thing? And we've heard it now more than once. The student said, the jargon assignment. And I'm like, what? And he said, yeah, oh my God. My first day at work, everybody was talking a different language. I had no idea. I had a couple people that were hired with me, and they were just blown away. They didn't know what to do. And I just sat down and said, oh, I got to do the jargon assignment. and the reason I say that, it's such a stupid little thing, but preparatory, expertise, understanding that you're going to constantly be facing things you know nothing about, and the primary skill you need is to get up to speed on them. And writ large, that's why I have faith that Randolph-Macon is going to survive, because we do that over and over in major after major on campus. And I can't think of a more valuable skill than that.
I think that's good, yeah. You know, I'm a field scientist, and people who work in the field have many, many experiences that you could tell stories about. And I'm having a hard time having one bubble up to the top now. I do, maybe one to talk about would be, and you asked earlier about some of these unique courses and travel courses. I do have good memories of having students taking final exams in my coastal geology course over flying in an airplane. So I got the idea from the movie Dead Poets Society, when Robin Williams jumped up on the table as the English, had the students jump up on the table as he was the English professor, and asked them to rip out the pages from their poetry books, and then asked them to look around the room and from a different perspective and see what they saw. So I took that idea and developed it into an opportunity for students to have a different perspective, and it seemed like a good end of the semester approach to synthesizing information. You know, get up in an airplane, change your perspective, look down at the landscape, and put together all the things you've learned during the year, and see if you can do inductive and reasoning up there in the sky. I didn't tell that to any administrator early on, because I was, don't ask, don't tell philosophy. And then Bob found out. And he brought it to my attention and said he was a little concerned, but he let me do it.
Yeah,
And
good.
so I've had great opportunities to develop creative
That is a brilliant idea, Mike. That's one of my favorite things you ever have come up with.
Yeah, I don't know how I do it, but it works.
Yeah. Well, Chaz Gowan and Mike Fenster, I want to thank you so much for coming to Making Memories and sharing all these memories with us. And
Been a real
congratulations
pleasure.
on your upcoming retirement.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Linda.
Yeah,
Thank you,
thanks.
Linda.